Older woman, listen. By the time you've reached your 50s, 60s, or beyond, you've already walked through more life than most people ever see coming. You've known what it's like to give your heart to someone who didn't know how to hold it. You've stayed up through sleepless nights raising children, or building careers, or holding together homes that looked picture perfect on the outside, but cracked with silence on the inside. And through it all, you've learned not only how to survive, but how to thrive on your own terms. You've stopped waiting for permission, stopped asking for approval, stopped measuring your worth by how much space you take up in someone else's world. And in that beautiful, powerful act of becoming fully yourself, you've stepped into a kind of womanhood that doesn't beg for love, but simply allows it in, if, and only if, it meets you at your level. But still, in the quiet moments after a promising date fizzle out, or a man who once leaned in begins to subtly pull away, there's that lingering question, spoken or unspoken, whispering just beneath your confidence. Why did he suddenly go cold? Was I too much? Did I intimidate him? Am I being punished for becoming the very woman I was always meant to be? Here's what no one warned you about being a mature woman in today's dating world. While your strength, your independence, your emotional clarity, and your unwavering sense of self are exactly what make you extraordinary, to the wrong man, to the unready man, to the man still clinging to outdated notions of masculinity, those same qualities can quietly awaken fears he doesn't even know how to name. Because when a man who has never done the inner work meets a woman who has, when he encounters someone who no longer plays the game of make me feel needed, when he sees a woman who's not asking for validation but offering genuine partnership, something in him stirs, something he may not understand, something that feels like admiration and threat all at once. And so he withdraws. Not because you were too bold, not because you spoke too clearly, not because you owned your space, but because he saw in you a mirror, and what it reflected wasn't weakness he could rescue, but strength he wasn't sure he could rise to meet. Today, I want to share with you the 3 deep, secret fears that many men carry, silently, unknowingly, and often shamefully, when they find themselves in the presence of a woman who no longer performs softness for approval, a woman who leads with grace but not apology, a woman who radiates the kind of power that only comes from knowing exactly who she is, what she deserves, and what she will no longer settle for. And I'm not telling you this so you'll dim your light, bend your truth, or try to become smaller just to make him feel bigger. I'm telling you this so you'll finally see that his reaction isn't a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of his readiness. Because once you understand these fears, once you see them for what they are, and stop internalizing them as flaws in yourself, you'll stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking the far more important question, is this the kind of man who's actually capable of loving the woman I've become? So if you're a woman over 50 who's done apologizing for her power, if you've grown tired of mixed signals and surface games, and you're ready to understand what truly separates a man who's available in theory from a man who's emotionally available in practice, then hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell, because every week we dive deep into the truth of mature love, into what real connection looks like after the fairy tale ends, and into why the most meaningful relationships often begin the moment you finally refuse to settle for less than your full, unapologetic self. Let's begin. Fear number 1. Your emotional intelligence will see right through him. Let me tell you about Patricia, a 47-year-old therapist who came to me frustrated with her dating life. Every man I meet seems to want to keep things surface level, she said. The moment I try to have a real conversation about feelings or life experiences, they shut down or change the subject. Here's what Patricia was encountering. Men fear that your emotional maturity will expose their emotional immaturity.
By the time we reach our 50s, 60s, and beyond, we've developed what psychologists call emotional intelligence, the ability to read between the lines, to notice when someone's words don't match their actions, to sense when something isn't quite right even if we can't put our finger on it. We've been through enough relationships to recognize patterns. We've survived enough heartbreak to spot red flags from a mile away. We've done enough inner work to know the difference between love and infatuation, between genuine connection and performative charm. And some men find this absolutely terrifying. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Many men who haven't done their own emotional work are intimidated by women who have. Your ability to communicate about feelings, to process emotions healthily, to create authentic intimacy, it highlights everything they've been avoiding about themselves. I think of David, who told me, dating younger women is easier because they don't ask the hard questions. They don't notice when I'm being emotionally unavailable. With older women, I feel like I'm under a microscope. They see things I don't even want to admit to myself. This is why some men prefer dating younger women who might mistake emotional unavailability for mystery, or who haven't yet developed the skills to recognize manipulation tactics, love-bombing behaviors, or breadcrumbing. But here's the beautiful truth. This fear is actually a gift. When a man is intimidated by your emotional maturity, he's telling you everything you need to know about his readiness for a real relationship. Understanding men means recognizing that the ones who run from your depth are saving you time you would have wasted trying to create intimacy with someone incapable of it. The men worth your time, the ones who've done their own work, who've faced their own demons, who've learned that vulnerability is strength, not weakness. These men are secretly attracted to your emotional intelligence. They're relieved to find someone who can communicate honestly, who won't play games, who knows how to love with both passion and wisdom. Have you ever noticed a man become uncomfortable when you tried to have a deeper conversation? Share your experience in the comments. Let's normalize the fact that emotional depth should be celebrated, not feared. As Matthew Hussey often says, the right person will never be intimidated by your growth. They'll be inspired by it. Your emotional intelligence isn't something to hide or tone down. It's one of your greatest assets in finding authentic love.
Fear number 2. Your independence makes them feel unnecessary. One truth that catches many by surprise, especially those who haven't yet unlearned the old narratives, is that many men quietly carry a fear they rarely admit, even to themselves. The fear that your independence means you have no space left for them in your life, no need that only they can fulfill, no role where they might still feel essential. Take Rebecca, for instance. At 54, she wasn't just surviving after divorce, she was flourishing. She had built a thriving marketing firm, traveled the world on her own terms, maintained deep friendships, and created a life filled with purpose, laughter, and hard-earned joy. But when she re-entered the dating world, the reactions she encountered caught her off guard. One man looked right at me and said, "You seem like you have it all figured out. What would you need me for?" She told me, her voice a mixture of amusement and quiet disappointment. Another got visibly uncomfortable when I offered to split the bill, like I'd taken something from him he didn't know how to ask for back. What Rebecca experienced wasn't arrogance or rejection. It was a reflection of something deep within the masculine identity that many men haven't yet redefined. For decades, centuries really, men have been taught that their value in a relationship stems from how useful they are, their ability to provide financially, to protect physically, to solve problems others can't. Being needed gave them purpose. Being depended on made them feel secure in their role. But when a woman shows up whole, emotionally resilient, financially secure, grounded in who she is and what she stands for, it creates a kind of emotional dissonance in men who have never been taught that love can exist without dependency.
To them, your self-sufficiency doesn't look like maturity. It feels like redundancy. I once counseled Mark, a 68-year-old former engineer, who put it plainly. When I was married, I fixed everything. Leaky pipes, broken budgets, family fights. It felt like I mattered. Now I go on dates with women who own homes, manage their own portfolios, and handle conflict better than I do. Sometimes I honestly don't know where I fit anymore. What men like Mark are really struggling with isn't your independence. It's their lack of a new definition of self-worth. They've spent their lives believing that love is transactional. I provide, therefore I'm valued. But the kind of love that grows after 50, the kind you're likely searching for, isn't built on transactions. It's built on resonance. And that's the shift many men aren't yet ready to make. They see love as a job they must be hired for, rather than a connection they must be worthy of. They're afraid that if you don't need them, they become unnecessary. But what they're missing is the very essence of mature love, that it's not about completing someone, it's about complementing them. You aren't asking anyone to rescue you. You're not looking to be fixed or filled or protected. You're inviting someone into a space of mutuality, a partnership where both people come whole, and from that wholeness create something richer. As Viktor Frankl so beautifully put it, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And this is where many men falter, not because you are too much, but because they have yet to choose the attitude that allows them to stand beside a powerful woman without feeling overshadowed by her light. Dr. Brené Brown captured it best when she said, "We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known." Your independence, then, isn't a barrier to connection, it's a beacon. It doesn't say, "I don't want love." It says, "I'm finally ready for a love that doesn't ask me to shrink." When a man recoils from your strength, when he's intimidated by your success or dismissive of your self-sufficiency, he's not showing you that you've done something wrong. He's showing you he hasn't done the work to meet you where you are. The men worth your time don't see your independence as competition. They see it as a gift. They feel honored that someone like you would invite them into your life, not because you have to, but because you choose to. They don't measure their masculinity by what they can fix for you. They reveal their maturity by how deeply they can respect, admire, and partner with you. Because the real measure of a man isn't in how much he's needed, but in how well he loves when he's in.
Fear number 3. Your life experience exposes their lack of growth. There's a kind of silence that happens when you share a hard-earned truth from your past. A silence not of awe, but of discomfort. And that silence, more than any word, often reveals the third and perhaps most vulnerable fear many men carry around women who have truly lived. The fear that your depth will expose their stagnation. Catherine, at 59, embodied resilience and evolution. Her life had not been easy, but it had been full. She had crossed oceans and languages, navigated the chaos of raising 2 children, grieved the death of a marriage, and walked through the fire of cancer, not unscathed, but unbroken. She had come through it all not just older, but wiser, softer in the right places, and stronger in the ones that mattered. And yet, after all this, she found herself sitting across the table from a man who spent 2 entire hours lamenting the politics of his office job, the same job he'd loathed for over 15 years. Catherine, ever the compassionate listener, gently asked what might be stopping him from pursuing something more aligned with his passions. The reaction? Defensive, cold, dismissive. He accused her of being judgmental, of having unrealistic expectations, of not understanding how hard it is to make change. But of course, Catherine understood better than most because she had done it again and again, and that was precisely what made him uncomfortable. You see, by the time we reach midlife, life has stopped being hypothetical. We've watched loved ones die,
We've lost things we thought we couldn't live without and learned that somehow we could. We've held hands through hospital visits and funerals, started over when we didn't think we had the strength, laughed at weddings while grieving old selves, loved people who left us, and stayed when we could have walked away. These aren't just memories, they're milestones, and they shape us into people who no longer find comfort in shallow waters. Some men, however, never let themselves go deep. They've clung to the familiar, numbed discomfort, refused to examine the wreckage of their patterns. And when they come face to face with a woman whose very presence is a testament to transformation, they feel exposed, not by her words, but by her being. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." But many men avoid stepping into the river at all. While you have allowed life's currents to move you, shape you, challenge you into becoming more, they have remained still. And stillness, when prolonged, becomes stagnation. It's not your stories that threaten them, it's what your stories reveal. Your grace under fire reveals their avoidance. Your self-awareness reminds them of the inner work they've never done. Your joy, hard-won and anchored in self-understanding, exposes how little joy they've cultivated beyond distraction and routine. Jennifer, one of my clients, once described it perfectly. She said, "Every time I talked about something I'd learned from my divorce, this man would get visibly uncomfortable, even dismissive. I realized he wasn't threatened by what happened to me. He was threatened by the fact that I'd grown because of it." And that's the heart of it. Your life experience holds up a mirror, and not every man is ready to look. Instead of facing their own resistance to growth, many would rather label women like you as too much, as intimidating, as too intense or too serious. But that judgment doesn't reflect your worth. It reveals their unreadiness. Because the truth is, if they accept that growth is possible, they must also accept that their current unhappiness is a choice. And that's a far more terrifying realization than admitting someone else might simply be ahead of them on the path. So if you've ever felt the need to shrink, to soften your truths, to water down your experiences so someone else could feel less insecure, let this be your reminder. Your wisdom is not a burden, it is a filter, and it is doing sacred work, keeping out those who were never ready to walk beside the woman you've become. Your life is not a competition, it's a curriculum, and only the brave will be willing to sit beside you in the classroom of shared experience.
What you may have once mistaken as rejection or intimidation was never truly about your worth, but rather about how your emotional strength, your independence, and your rich life experience reflect a kind of wholeness that not every man has the courage to stand beside. And that is not a problem for you to solve, but a gift that gently reveals who is truly ready for the kind of love you now seek. When a man recoils at your confidence or withdraws from your depth, it is not a sign that you are too much, but rather that he has not yet stepped into the fullness of himself and cannot yet meet you in the space where mutual respect, shared wisdom, and emotional maturity create true intimacy. Carl Rogers once wrote that, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." And this is where your power lies. Not in adjusting your light to soothe another's insecurity, but in embracing the brilliance of who you have become so completely that their fear loses all influence over how you love, how you lead, and how you choose. The truth is, the men who are secretly afraid of older women are the same men who have not yet made peace with their own evolution. And your presence, grounded, wise, emotionally generous, becomes a quiet but undeniable mirror to all the growth they've postponed, resisted, or denied.
But for every man who flinches at your power, there is another who will recognize it as familiar, because he too has been shaped by life, softened by loss, awakened by love, and who understands that a relationship between two people who no longer need rescuing can be the most profoundly healing experience of all. So when you encounter fear, shrinkage, deflection, take it not as a cue to shrink back into a more palatable version of yourself, but as a gentle reminder that your evolution now serves as a compass, pointing you not to the men who tolerate your strength, but to the one who celebrates it, grows with it, and meets it with a depth of his own. Tell me in the comments, which of these fears have you encountered? And how did you rise above them without dimming your light? And if this message spoke to something inside you, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell, because each week we go deeper into the truths of mature love, the psychology behind real connection, and the strength that comes from no longer needing to be anything but fully, unapologetically yourself. Because at this stage of life, we don't fall in love blindly. We rise into it with clarity, intention, and the quiet confidence that we are, without question, finally enough for the love we've always deserved.